It can be uncomfortable when we're kept waiting, isn't it? And yet, waiting is an important part of our faith. When we wait, or kept waiting, one of the things that happens immediately is that, what's wrong? How come he's not saying anything? What's wrong? So when we hear, do not ignore this one fact, beloved, that with the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like one day. So in the first reading, the people of God are waiting for God to complete his promise that they will be restored from exile to the promised land. And in today's second reading, the Christian community is waiting for the Lord to complete his promise to return again. And waiting is something that's so much a part of our lives. But right now, the kind of waiting we're doing is unique. Because in other years, our waiting was kind of individualistic. You know, this person was waiting to get her letter from the college, whether she's going to be accepted or not. And this person over here was waiting for to recover from surgery, let's say. But right now, the whole world is waiting to get out of this pandemic, right? And what happens when we're kept waiting is not only that we begin to be anxious, but we let things slip. I mean, that's really what medical experts are telling us right now, is that we started to let things slip. We're not washing our hands, we're not wearing masks, we're not keeping 6 feet distance, and as a result of all that, things are falling apart. And that's the nature of what happens when we're kept waiting. We lose our edge. And during Advent, we don't like to be kept waiting. I mean, isn't it true that retailers started to put up their sales before Thanksgiving? How many of us have put up Christmas lights? The fact of the matter is that we're not so good at waiting, which may be one of the reasons why John the Baptist is hardly ever raised up as a great figure for these weeks, because he's not a ho, 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 glad tidings kind of character, is he? He's a weird dude who has a tough message about repentance. As we heard in 2 Peter, the Lord does not delay his promise, as some regard delay, but he is patient with you, not wishing that anyone should perish, but that all should come to repentance. It's kind of like a cartoon that I saw a long time ago. It's a cartoon of a husband and wife in their car traveling across the desert with in this pretty deserted kind of highway. And the wife turns to her husband and says, I know we're lost, but I didn't want to tell you that because we're making such great time. Advent is a time in which we decide we're going to stop and figure out, to what are we hurrying, right? To what are we hurrying? That's what Advent's all about. The fact is that when people ask, are you ready for Christmas? They're not talking about John the Baptist kind of readiness, are they? And how often is it that I say, boy, I wish somebody had told me this ahead of time? And the fact of the matter is, oftentimes they had told me ahead of time, but I wasn't really paying attention because I didn't think I needed to know it right then. They told it, but it went in here and out there because my mind was in another place. And again, that's why the church year after year offers us John the Baptist. A number of years ago, a man by the name of Howard Rice was a professor at the San Francisco School of Theology, and he was very, very well liked and regarded. And so one day, in one of his large classes, somebody raised her hand and said, "Professor, how is it that you got to be so wise?" And he was quiet for a long while. And then he gripped the sides of his wheelchair, and in a voice that kind of choked, he said, "Muscular sclerosis." And he proceeded to tell them his history. That some years before that, he was regarded as an extremely successful pastor of a large suburban parish outside of Chicago. And he really was regarded as somebody that had it all together, was doing great things. But he said to that class, "You know what? You know what I was doing? I was living on my talent. I was preaching on my talent. I was ministering on my talent. People saw me as a success because of my talent. And when I got muscular sclerosis, I had to cut back. I couldn't do everything that people thought was so successful. I had to start living on trust. And that changed my life. And I thank God. I don't believe that God sent this disease to me, but it's true that it changed my life. And I am thankful. In other words, it got his attention. And so, when the prophet Isaiah tells the people who are waiting to be restored to Israel that after all these punishments, the time has come, perhaps it was just to get their attention. And so the church presents us with this stark figure of John the Baptist. Repentance doesn't necessarily have to do with something that happens to us, as it did to that professor. More likely, it has to do with something we're going to do to clear the way, to do the kind of preparation for Christmas that John the Baptist talks about. And God gives us time to do that. And we can't say, nobody told us.